As I reflect upon my two 5E lessons taught this semester for science, I would break it down into 5 different categories: nature of science, age appropriateness, assessment, reaction, and reflection. For nature of science, in the first lesson, I chose science as a human endeavor. In this experiment, my students got to create precipitation out of shaving cream and colored dye. This lesson also addresses questions about the natural and material world because my students had to figure out what would make precipitation. My second lesson also focuses on science as a human endeavor. In this experiment, my students got to create an anemometer. Before construction, they learned how an anemometer works and why they are important. I gave them all the necessary materials to build an anemometer and taught them how they work, but they on their own had to design a plan that would make their anemometer spin correctly, which leads to the nature of science that scientific investigations use a variety of methods. Multiple students came up with varying ways of how to make their anemometer work and spin, but having completely different constructions. Being in a 5th grade class, my students vary greatly in cognitive ability. Within PJ's theory of cognitive development, my students fall under the concrete operational stage, with budding into formal operational. In the concrete operational, my students can think logically about concrete objects. A few of my students are budding into the formal operational stage. This is the adulthood stage of thinking. I challenge them to think about the what ifs in every situation. For assessment in the first lesson, I chose to use the facts that were in our Keeley book. Here are examples of a probe that I gave my students about wet jeans. They had to answer the question and tell me why they thought that. The correct answer in this problem was C. Most of the students in my class picked answer C, which is the water moved up into the air in an invisible form. But a few other students picked various answers. Here are their examples. Once these were completed, I gathered data from what the students had answered and used it to form my lesson. I then administered the same probe at the end of my lesson to ensure that my teaching was successful. After re-administering the probe, I found that most of the students got the question correct. This made me confident that my teaching was successful. In my second lesson, I used another fact from the Keeley book, which is the BDA fact. In this fact, I asked prompted questions before, during, and after instruction. To say my students loved the science experiments and hands-on activity would be an understatement. Even after teaching only one science lesson, the students asked me if I would be their science teacher for the rest of the year and even teach the whole school science because it was that great. Check out one of my students' anemometers. It really works. My CT was very supportive and allowed me to create activities that pushed my students thinking outside of the box and got them working hands and knees down on the floor with me to investigate. In this clip, my students and I are investigating firsthand the difference between kinetic and potential energy.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
If I had to pick anything to change about my science lessons, I would change the amount of time I was given to complete science. I think my lessons had a good amount of critical thinking and hands-on activity that really challenged my students. and I can't think of anything I would change about this experience.